So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I might see you in a month. Whoa, that was wonderful. Good times had by all, I'm pooped. Wonder where I can find a place to sleep. Huh? The computer's on. What is this? Wait a second, I thought Toby Fox meant Undertale, not this imposter Asriel? All jokes aside, I've always been intrigued by this detail, that Asriel created a pseudo-Undertale in Deltarune. Now of course, it was ultimately to show a parallel between the Asriels in both games, highlighting that they both share an edgy OC of themselves. But what's truly interesting about it is that Deltarune's Asriel expressed it in video game form. That, along with many other connections I'll be making in this video, have led me to a rather insightful and almost equally crazy conclusion, that Asriel in Deltarune is not only a reflection of Asriel in Undertale, but a reflection of Toby Fox himself. Think about it for a second. Deltarune began when Asriel was in college, just as Deltarune began when Toby Fox was in college. Now that you're probably getting a little concerned on where this video is going, I want to make it perfectly clear that I will not be going into a creepy amount of detail on Toby Fox as a person. Nor do I think that would be in any way helpful. I'll be sticking entirely to genuine publications, as it is the respectful and productive way of researching this theory. Speaking of publications, I'll begin by discussing the Volume 5 RPG Maker publication in Toby Fox's Secret Base, a column in the Japanese gaming magazine Weekly Famitsu. I cannot speak Japanese, so I'll be using the English translation created by Chart, so credit to them. This single page has blown my mind in regards to Toby's experience making games, as it holds countless parallels connecting this early stage in his life/career to aspects across Deltarune and Undertale. Like here, tell me who this quote reminds you of. There was a comedic character named Roth who I was fond of. He says a lot of nonsense, but actually has a serious and tragic backstory. He comes from a futuristic society and is very skilled with ancient technology. Basically, he was the best and pretty badass. That quote was Toby's description of a character from a game made by his brother when they were kids, and it was quite literally just sans Undertale. So you see how much of a lower goldmine this all is now, right? With that in mind, let me scroll back to the beginning. Toby starts by explaining how he's always wanted to create games, the earliest of these efforts being him and his brothers doodling game layouts in church, with paper given by their parents to keep them occupied. Eventually, his older brothers find RPG Maker, where they can, quote, turn their drawings into real games, so they all start making their own games, though unfortunately none of these were ever finished and really never saw the light of day, which is where I'd like to draw the first parallel of this theory. Asriel and Chris created a doll in church that was turned into a real game, with the final boss that has the exact same description in the game on Asriel's computer that was shown earlier, that, quote, never saw the light of day. These experiences are almost identical, as they both start with siblings playing in church and lead to those ideas being brought to life in video game form, only for them to never really come to fruition. A further similarity that can be drawn is that the final boss is essentially Asriel's edgy OC of himself, as I mentioned earlier, which is just like how Toby's first attempts at a game were called Toby's Adventure, Toby's Quest, and Toby's Adventure 2. Now that we've established Toby not only takes inspiration from these experiences to write characters, but also to write Deltarune's story, I'll combine both in this next parallel. Toby was a character in his oldest brother's game, going by Green Mage Toby. What's incredibly interesting is that at the end of this paragraph, he adds that the protagonist of this game's name was Ralsei, which he specifies as the inspiration for the name Ralsei in Deltarune. This detail is probably the most well-known part of this publication. Many have stated that it reveals that Ralsei essentially existed conceptually before Asriel, which aligns with the fact that Deltarune was technically in development before Undertale. Though you probably already see there's an even greater connection that could be made here. The fact that Toby squeezes in that additionally the same game with a green mage also has another character that inspired the name Ralsei is no mistake. These two details amalgamated together in this paragraph are co-oply the inspiration for Ralsei and Deltarune, just as Roth became the inspiration for Sans and Undertale. But there's an even deeper connection that can be made here. As we've already established, Toby holds parallels to Asriel, a boss monster with white fur, in that they both created games with their siblings when they were young. So it would only make sense sense that Deltarune's equivalent of Toby's green mage self-insert character would be a boss monster with white fur. Well, isn't that weird? Ralsei looks very boss monster with white fur-like. In fact, their names are almost identical as well. In all seriousness, we've all seen this coming in some sort of way. Obviously, Ralsei's similarity to Asriel in name, behavior, and appearance means something. What we didn't know is what it meant. Sure, we could guess that he's Chris's desire to be like their brother, or even like, I don't know, piles of Asriel's dust, but we've never had more conclusive evidence than what I just presented. So now that I've done the heavy lifting, it's time to fill in the gaps with some soft mortar and lay my theory out straight. Ralsei is a self-insert character of Asriel in the game he made with his sibling Chris when they were kids. You may wonder then how Ralsei ended up in the supply closet of the school, until you remember the unused classroom uniquely as a bunch of old toys thrown about the floor, that are loosely laid out in the format of the Card Kingdom Dark World, as if whoever arranged them like this did so to create a game that never saw light of day. And someone did lay these toys out. I had first assumed that they were only arranged like this as a byproduct of the Dark World forming until I realized that the Library Dark Fountain didn't leave the computer lab in the layout of the cyber world. Because of this, it is my conclusion that Chris and Asriel, when they were young, created and played games at the school where their mother worked so she can keep an eye on them, in the unused classroom and supply closet it was connected to, like pre-K basically. It may have even been overseen by Alvin, explaining the drawing on the cabinet and possibly contributing to Alvin Night. Anyways, in this game they created characters for themselves to play as, Asriel's character being Ralsei, a green mage colored in the missing green crayon, embodying his overly lawful and pure personality. Chris's character, on the other hand, is a bit more complicated. If you really want to be crazy, you could say it was the vessel, but honestly they probably didn't even have one as they're rather inattentive. Regardless, this is why Chris has a save file when you first enter the Dark World, as in a way they have already played Chapter 1. Though then of course, once they grew out of playing pretend at school, they moved to making games on the computer instead, casting the toys of the unused classroom into obscurity, only for them to be brought back to life through the power of darkness, resulting in... When Asriel was in college, Deltarune began, just as when Toby Fox was in college, Deltarune began. I'm back, and I'm better than ever. When I first started working on this, I was worried that I just forgot how to make videos in the time I've been gone, but as you can see I didn't. There's a few things I'd like to talk about. First is the length of this video. Yes, it is shorter than Shatter Crystals, but I actually have a kind of good reason. At the end of the RPG Maker's Secret Base entry, Toby says that what he ultimately took away from the time he spent making games with his siblings, excluding Sans and Asriel, is to keep everything in scope, and generally not shoot for unnecessary goals. So, in a way I'd like to think this video is kind of a reflection of that, at least in some ways. Not saying that I purposely wrote the script short. Believe me, I covered all the bases I set out to. Second is regarding the software this was made in. Yes, it is still Clipchamp. I do now have access to Adobe Premiere, and I'm sure it'll come handy in the future, but right now my skills are just too cemented in Clipchamp, for better and for worse. And there's probably a lot more worse than there is better, but I at least can't complain about how relatively comfortable I've become with it, in a Stockholm Syndrome kind of way. I'd also like to announce that I have recently created a Discord server. At the moment, its only function is to basically pipeline people to my DMs to get in contact. It may seem unnecessary, but it's the best way I've found so far. Though, even if you don't need to DM me, I still recommend joining it, as if enough people do, I'll likely start transforming it into a genuine server to chat and post stuff in. No promises though, moderating scares me. The last thing I'd like to announce is that if this video performs similarly to my past ones, I'll likely achieve enough milestones to start monetizing the channel. But don't worry, I can assure you that I'm not seeking money in these videos. The simple act of sharing my ideas is all the pay I need. What monetization does mean, though, is that I can focus more time on videos rather than working a job. Not that either truly supports my living, at least not yet. I simply aim to maintain an income which can be fulfilled with a job or with money from this channel. So if monetization does work out, I'll be sure to make a community post notifying anyone who may be interested. But anyways, I guess that's everything I have to talk about. I am really proud of how this video, especially its theory, came out. More theorists need to delve into Toby's inspirations. He's been really vocal about them. But anyways, thank you so much for watching the entirety of this video. If you're new, I have other Deltarune theories you may be interested in. Though, that should be everything, so I guess I'll see you in maybe a month?